Hello, and thank you for joining us for another special episode of AMA's Marketing In. I'm your host, AMA CEO, Bennie F. Johnson. In our episodes, we explore life through a marketing lens, delving into conversations with individuals that flourish at this intersection of marketing and the unexpected. We'll introduce you to visionaries whose stories you might not yet have heard of, but are exactly the ones you need to know. Through our thought-provoking conversations, we'll unravel the challenges, triumphs, and pivotal moments that have been shaped by marketing. Today, we have a really special guest, none other than Mark Singer. Mark is Deloitte Digital's U.S. Chief Marketing Officer and agency lead. As a commercial growth driver, he embeds creativity into the way businesses solve their problems and helps create purpose-driven solutions that transform how they operate. By blending his marketing and technology experience, he helps create opportunities for disruptive growth. There's so much more I can say about Mark's background, but we're just going to jump in. Mark, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Hey, Benny, great to meet you. That introduction, I'm going to have him change all that about me. It's always so embarrassing whenever I hear that. But it's great to meet you.
It is always fun to have that. I'm going to embarrass you some more, my friend, because it's a delight to have you on the podcast and really to think about your role and your journey, which we'll talk a bit about. I'd love for our audience to learn a little bit about you. Now, one thing that we have in common, you spent some time in Washington, D.C.
I did.
Talk about the early experience of Mark at GW.
Oh my gosh!
How do you go from pre-med to today?
To today? All right. Well, so crazy stories. I'm very much a science-minded guy, but I'm also an art-minded guy. So I think I attribute that to having undiagnosed ADD for a long time. And when I was at GW, I wanted to go to medical school. I was very excited about it. I worked in the emergency room. I actually did some time at DC General just to see the action. So that gives you a little bit of around. I wanted to see the action. So they had the first heart lung transplant in DC at the time, and of course, me being like the guy that wants to be in front of everything, I was like, I got to figure out a way to get in there. The only way that I could get in there was that if I went and I filmed it for the medical school. Literally, because then I knew my way around, an OR. I knew my way around, so I wasn't going to get in the way or drop anything on anybody. So they're like, okay, can you go film this? Because it's an educational institution and everything. So I went and filmed it. And it was pretty cool. And then I put the package together afterwards and, I edited it and did all the color corrections and everything on it. And I was like, God, this was a lot of fun, right? And I had a moment in time where I was like, I love doing that. And I wasn't ready to do another 6 years of school. And so I was like, I'm going to do this for a little bit. I think it was fun. And, I basically moved to New York and became a producer at an ad agency. And that's basically how I got, much to my parents' chagrin, I got away from the business of medicine and into the business of marketing. But as far as my dad is concerned, he still says that when he talks about me to his friends, he goes, "Mark's in computers." So I guess somewhere along the line, I've gone from medicine to advertising and marketing to computers, and I can't quite figure out the relevance of all that. So.
It's such a common theme, and we've touched on it a couple times in our podcast. I get a chance to talk to incredibly successful people like yourself who've created new ways of thinking about the business. And we all still come back to our relationship with our parents, trying to figure out what we do. No matter.
Because I don't think you can explain what we do to our parents. They just don't understand it. So.
No, I'm fond of saying my mother-in-law once reached out to me after a podcast interview, and she looked at me and she said, "I finally understand who you are and what you do." Uh-oh. And that was really wonderful.
Yeah, that's great.
For the fact that I'd been married to her daughter for 20 years. It was and it was a great moment of I finally understand. But
yeah, she thinks you're a professional podcaster.
This is probably true today, right? but when we think about kind of our growth, one of the things that we play around with is we never really get a chance to understand the future. And kind of looking back, you can see how that moment opened up and prepared you for today.
Right.
I'd love to talk about kind of these moments of pivot in the work that you're doing now. In the bio, I hesitated for a second when it describes you as the U.S. Chief Marketing Officer and U.S. Agency Lead. Because one of the things that's really provocative and I think really dynamic is the work you're doing to pivot away from that classic concept of agency.
Right.
So talk a bit about what that means for you and Deloitte Digital in this day as you adapt.
Yeah, it's so I've just a little bit about my career before Deloitte. So I spent a lot of time in agencies, doing frankly, a lot of different roles within them. And I came to Deloitte about almost 15 years ago to build what is today Deloitte Digital and build our capabilities in our market around that. And that was all about a moment in time going back then of this shift of there's all this white space between consulting firms and agencies, and because you had this influx of technology and had this influx of digital, and people using apps and websites and sort of connection with e-commerce and all that, and that was really sort of like what consulting firms were good at, and then agencies were good at their thing. And so my career sort of started with this disruption in the agency landscape. And I've been doing a lot of like thinking about this, and essentially we've been shaping our business this way. I think the construct, what we're entering into, this construct of a quote unquote agency, is sort of at its time. And the reason why I say that is this: if you go back in time and you think about what an agency is, the word agency comes from a company being an agent of another company. So agencies were born out of this. I am a middleman between you and something. And generally it's because a client didn't understand how to access celebrity or how to access production or how to buy media or do any of that stuff. So the agency came in as a we're going to do this work for you, and we're going to execute it for you, and we're going to be an agent of you in doing that. And I think what has happened over the time, if you look, going back to, we started a tech revolution, or got into a data revolution. We're now in an AI revolution. Like all of a sudden, all these things started coming into play that brands, companies, enterprises can use to actually do marketing. And they still need partners, but I think they need partners that will do something different for them, and not just be my agent and let me hand you these things and you go do it and then come back to me when you're done. And so I think this whole idea of agency, and I mean, look no further than what you see happening in the landscape right now of all the holding companies. It's changing. It's much more tech driven. It's much more data driven. It's even media and creative and some of the classic foundations of what a quote unquote agency has been doing is all powered by tech and data, and it's got to be used at the client site first. So I think this whole notion of that world is changing, which is going to mean different operating models, different people, different constructs, like all that stuff. If I had that crystal ball and I were to look forward, I think we're entering into a world where like that landscape is going to shift so dramatically. And it's going to be more incumbent on brands to sort of own their marketing and then figure out their partnership models from that standpoint.
Accordingly. One of the things that in this recent year, I've been obsessed about is this notion of, if the future of business is changing and the future of work is changing, therefore the future of the profession and the professional have to change. And I love that prompt because it's provocative to just what you just talked about. If all these things are changing, then what's next for the role of the leader of marketing within a brand? How does the role of a CMO change with this new reality?
Yeah. It's a great question. I mean, I think you also have to look at this idea of all this change. And this is part of the narrative that I think people have that's off a little bit. All this change does not mean the jobs are going away. All this change does not mean that like all of a sudden the robots are going to be your next creative director, analytics leader, tech leader, whatever. No, the jobs are going to change in and of themselves. And so when I think about the role of the CMO, in the future, and I just did this talk at, I think it was Advertising Week, that, I think we take on different jobs. there still is the job of we're the storytellers in chief, right? We have to tell our brand story. We have to tell our brand narrative. We have to get out in front of our customer. We have to connect our brand to the customer, right? That's super important. Um, we're still the growth drivers. I do believe that at the end of the day. And particularly in industries where there's clear line of sight around transaction and sales, right? The intersection of marketing and sales is so important, and we are the growth
Right.
drivers because we're helping find new markets. But I also think that we are a little bit of we are the agentic CMO, right? In the sense that the best some of the best business cases for deploying and using AI in an enterprise are in marketing.
Yeah.
Marketing is also the hardest to convince to go do that and really do the fundamental change. But I think as stewards of what a future of the business can look like, where people and tools are coming together to engage with customers, there's the CMO role in there. And I also think, in a lot of respects, we're the tech CMO, right? In the sense
Right.
that we're understanding how the platforms come together and work. And it's not like we're all hobbyists in tech. Most of us don't know how to code and don't do half of the engineering stuff that goes on behind it. But like, I think having a clear understanding of sort of the
Right.
role of tech in your business, because otherwise you become tech led as opposed to tech enabled. And I think it sort of changes it. So I think the role shifts. But more interesting, my view on it is what's going to happen is there's this intersection of like these silos of your organization. So I'm just going to use the sales and marketing as the example that agentic agent type of solutions. Sure, I could use agents in my business to help my graphic designers crop out backgrounds and create new backgrounds. Easy peasy, right? We're in and out.
Right.
But can I actually use agents to help connect the things that are hard in my organization, like the sales conversation and the marketing conversation, and how to
Mhm.
orchestrate those two? Can I use agents to connect my campaigns to the supply chain so that I know what's coming down the pipe, and I know that I can turn on these campaigns faster and more rapidly based upon what's in the supply chain coming down to me. So I think there's an interesting role that the CMO takes, that's that growth driver, but it becomes much more enterprise centered than just sort of focused on the marketing lane, so to speak. It's almost like a chief commercial officer of sorts than a chief marketing officer.
Right. We talk about this, the words matter in that, sometimes we carry these classic definitions, it locks us in. But when we think about the object at hand, right? How do we partner to drive those spaces? I think about your role in Deloitte Digital in this space. Often, if you're dealing with a brand, the brand's going to have a really high expertise in their brand, maybe in their industry, but you're able to bring in technology expertise that we on a brand wouldn't have,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
We're going to have one experience with technology in our brand, and you're going to bring to the table, well, here's what 5 other brands did.
And both in and out of the industry too.
Right.
So, again, kind of going back to this agency construct, there's that old adage, two is a conflict, three is a practice. Most
Uh,
agencies don't work. If I'm servicing a a banking client, I'm not going to service another banking client because that
right.
creates conflict. But if you're a trusted organization, I could service 5 banking clients and then help each one of them be more successful because I'm bringing expertise about that
Right.
industry. But then I'm also bringing in banking is becoming a lot like retail. Banking is becoming a lot like entertainment, like actually
Right.
media in the sense. So like and I'm bringing those expertise into the table and then how do you use the capabilities and what capabilities you need to build in-house, what capabilities you want to partner with. So yeah, it's a pretty fun time to sort of have this dual-hatted role, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Talk to me a bit about it. It just struck me as you were talking about playing in this space. And, I'm often fond of quoting the Netflix quote that our goal is to become HBO before HBO becomes us in the
right.
space. You just talked about banking being more entertainment, banking being more
Mhm.
consumer focused in there. How is it to work in a space in which, once again, the classic definitions don't apply?
As hard as it is, like I'm completely empathetic. Like as hard as it is for a marketer
Right.
to be comfortable changing the way that they've been doing things, that they've been taught to do things that they know works, right?
Right.
To be
Right.
changing that. it's even harder than I think for a lot of clients to start thinking about even differentiated models of how to approach it.
Mm,
Things like commerce media networks.
mhm.
If you're a retailer, you get it right away because it's kind of the same. It's kind of trade promotions at the end of the day.
Right,
Like, what does that mean if I'm not a retailer? What does that mean if I'm a cruise line? Like, what does that mean if I'm a credit card company, right? How do I start putting that together? And I think they're starting to see that there's value in sort of adopting these other constructs within their business. And look, as much as we as consumers are converging on, I'm not mobile only, I'm not web only, I'm not
right,
TV only, right? I'm converged. I
right,
think our businesses are starting to see the same way that like these natural siloization is just doesn't
right.
exist anymore, and they need to start thinking outside of those constructs.
Are you ever surprised at the way in which contemporary customers show up? We talked about this convergence and seeing in brands like, I know where to find my customers until you don't.
Yes, I think sometimes the more interesting question is where's the customer I don't even know about yet? We work with this company. They do a lot of political polling, but they do spend a lot of time in marketing. And so like half of their time is not to find the people that are going to buy or the people that are not going to buy, but they're trying to find the people in the middle, right? And it's
Right,
just like everything else. Like there's always this big middle piece, and that's the people I have to go after. I think a lot of marketing spends their time on their on what they know, not figuring out how do they line up against the great middle of everything. And we do that. I mean, that's prospecting and stuff. But I,
right,
I, I think I think there's still a world of like I have this product, and how do I put this product in front of what kind of cohorts versus here's the cohorts of what they need, and do I need to start influencing a change in my product?
right.
Do I need to start influencing a change in the channel? Do I need to start thinking differently about it? And that's where I think as a CMO, you become, it goes back to the classic, 4 Ps, right? We've
Right.
been relegated to promotion and placement as the 2 Ps that most CMOs end up in. We're not in control of pricing. We're not in control of product. Maybe influence it. We maybe can kind of
Right.
help with that. But at the end of the day, there are people that do pricing, and then there's people who do product development. And so I think our roles start expanding so that
Mm,
because now we have the time, we're no longer focused on doing marketing, we're focused on the marketing outcomes. And I think
right.
that gives us the opportunity to then expand our remit to drive the things that get more customers in versus just trying to optimize the customer and the base where I can go after.
So I'm going to ask this question. I haven't thought about it in this way. We talk a lot about marketing to multiple generations in the marketplace. I want to bring that back and put that microscope on us as CMOs. What advice do you have for CMOs of different generations? Because there's a way in which
Ooh.
CMOs looked at the world 10 years
Mhm.
ago. And then there's the way, as we smile, my friend, as those who are taking on the new CMOs today have a different remit and a different reality.
You took a different angle on that question than I've heard it before. Like, let me get to it this way then. So,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
um, I think our education system, marketing education system,
Hmm.
um, does people a disservice.
Mm. Hmm.
You know, we were talking earlier. I have kids applying to school right now. They don't want kids using AI. We don't want kids. They're not teaching the modern ways of thinking. And so I think there's a level of they're still teaching very class. I was with somebody at an institution, and they were talking about how they're teaching strat planning, and I'm like, well, that's kind of still very like waterfall, right? So they're not
Right.
teaching the agile ways of sort of thinking about. So interesting. I'm smirking because I don't know how much of it is a generational thing versus a willingness to take risks thing. I think as people are becoming CMOs or leading marketing, their ability to understand first, you got to understand why the status quo works,
Right.
but then start to question the status quo around, well, what if this does it differently? And don't focus on like the doing of marketing, focus on the outcomes that marketing will take
Mm.
you to. And I think that's where you start to shift this perspective. I mean, there are plenty of multi-generational CMOs that I was just down at A&A a few weeks ago, and like you see it there. There's a lot of people that have been in the business a long time that are very much at the forefront of driving interesting ways of thinking and working and operating, as much as there are people that are like fresh out of the gate and they're operating in new business models with startups and the like. I think it's more around the curiosity of
Mhm.
how you as a CMO should work with the right level of skepticism around how much do I jump into the fray of the future as well.
Now, in that context, how do you disrupt yourself? So if you take the generational approach, you've got a CMO who's been a rock star, who's been delivering for the business, but
Right.
that equation changes.
So recognizing I'm talking with the AMA in this one, uh, I think much in the same realm that the term agency
Right.
has sort of has some stain to it, or could
Right.
have some challenges to it. Um, I think marketing is kind of in the same category in the sense that
Yeah.
um, I said going all the way back to the old Wanamaker quote of I think it was Wanamaker of 50% of my advertising is wasted. I just don't know which 50%, right? So there's always been sort of this less than precise view on it. I think as an industry, as a business, we have to rebrand what the value of marketing is. And maybe it's the term that we have to move away from for a bit. I don't know what other term we would use, but I personally am fond of like being a commercial growth driver, right? Because I'm focused on commerce, I'm driving growth, and that is all about customers and bringing them in and converting them and executing on them. And I think resetting our vantage point as being growth drivers with commercial orientation and then also with a transformation mindset, being willing to walk away from tried and true approaches and not fall on our sword about certain things. I think that's where our future is gonna come from.
Yeah. I had a good friend of mine who's a CMO and he worked for a storied marketing company. And we talked about this all the time. And they put him on the innovative brand. And he was always in the midst of this tension because everyone running the flagship brand had years of success
Right,
and playbooks on top of playbooks that worked,
right, right.
but he was breaking new ground.
Yeah, yeah.
And that tension in the space where they had to disrupt, I know we've approved this and pitched it to the board and budget 20 times over.
And I think a lot of that. I mean, I don't know. If you were to ask me, if we were out having a beer and we were talking about this, and you were asking me why I think that's the case, I think there's a story of like what's the average CMO tenure? 72 months, like depending on who you want to talk to, but let's just say it's 3 years. Of course you don't want to take risks. Like I want to be in my job longer than 3 years. So like, I think there's a little bit of like personal management that goes into some of this potentially, I guess. I think we've kind of done a little bit of that back
Right.
to, or the line and just driving transformation at our clients. I see that like a lot of marketing is resistant to the change, even though they want the change because they have to work differently, different partners, different
Right. Right.
structures, et cetera. So, yeah. So I
So,
think there's a fear of failure in there, but I mean, reality isn't what we do. Innovation is about failure. It's just
yeah.
how do you react to failure and how do you overcome that? I think is where success begets us.
And it becomes a persistent driver for success,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
It's the
100%.
way in which we reinforce where we are. When we think about, that role of the CMO and talk about the changes, you know, this is in every conversation that we have in the public, in private, in the text that you receive. The question is what to do with and about AI,
Right.
right? And I think, we did a bit of, as the AMA, we did a bit of proprietary research at the end of last year. And it was really powerful to see about 82% of marketing leaders are actively we use the term playing with AI in some sense.
Right.
It didn't speak to having a strategic advantage or idea or insight, but we're actively playing with it. Some of the play is self-generated.
Yeah.
Often it's our other C-level executives saying, figure this thing out.
Right. Right. Or it's a board. Yeah. It's a board directive saying you're doing AI. And then you go, okay, I got to go figure out what to do with
Yeah,
AI
gotta
and
figure out.
answer the board. Yeah.
So when we think about that, what are some of the better practices you're seeing now with CMOs who are trying to figure it out?
Sure. So first and foremost, one of the things I think we've gotten ourselves stuck into with any kind of new technology, but particularly AI, is a lot of pressure to do something, but still lack of clarity around what to do
Right.
specifically. And that's led us into this cycle of endless pilots. We're just going to create pilot over pilot over pilot over pilot. And the problem with pilots is that I think the true value of AI doesn't come from a siloed structure or structured approach. Like I kind of alluded it to her earlier. I think the true power of AI is connecting the hard things and orchestrating across hard things, as well as doing some simple tasks. And the pilots are always around these simple tasks, but it's really hard to build a business case out of the simple tasks. I use the example of like removing backgrounds from image, right? If I'm a retailer and I sell bedding and want to put the bed in different scenarios, right? I used to have to pay somebody a lot of money to go in and cut it out and then slap it on. Now I can kind of do that a little bit quicker. Sure, great business case, but it's not going to actually help fund what needs to get
Right.
done with AI. So like number one is like if you're going to do it, start with the process, start with the way you work, and then let the tech do what you want it to do. I think we start a lot of pilots with what can the tech do? Oh, it can do this. Let me go use that and see how I do that. Right. And so I
Right.
think it's shifting that paradigm. Number one. I think number two is also kind of getting out of the vernacular this idea of like AI is job replacement.
Right.
Because it is really about creating hybrid working environments. And by the way, it's not going to happen from the top. It's going to happen at the bottom or in the middle first. So like you talk about playing with it, which is a very, we have a similar kind of construct we talk to people about. Like go experiment, go do things. But at
Right.
the end of the day, unleash your teams
Right.
to go do it because the younger generation, the mid management and below, they're a lot more digital native than we are at the end of the
Right.
day. And they also have a lot less to lose, quote unquote, than we do at the end of the
Right.
day. And unleash them. Let them experiment, let them learn. And at the same time, you learn from them. And I think that's
Right.
hard for us to do sometimes because we're expected to be the mentors and the guides and
Right.
the most knowledgeable person in the room. But the fact is that we are enablers of that for them.
Right.
So let's figure out what that works.
One of the
Uh,
most powerful things in when you think about our professional careers is this often unidentified notion of this multidimensional mentorship,
yeah,
right? We're up, down, inside, out, diagonal, kind of learning from teaching and learning all at the same time. Right.
and being comfortable not knowing. I
Yeah.
I got to tell you, like, just very recently, was in a conversation with somebody who who was talking about data, and this person kept saying, "Well, and then we're going to do the data thing," and I'm like, I finally realized that they didn't really know what they were talking about, but
Right.
they felt obligated to make it sound like they knew what they were talking about it, and it made it actually hard for us to kind of help them, but um, that I think there's just that kind of challenge that we have to sort of like be vulnerable in a
Right.
changing dynamic world. And I
Right.
think that's what true leadership, ultimately looks like is being comfortable in that vulnerability and building the team around you to help balance all that.
In that sense, I'm going to ask you this question. What's something that you learned recently? And I'm going to ask it a little differently than just general, what have you learned? This isn't a big groundbreaking thing. What's something really small in that quiet moment that you learned and you're like, that's helping to shape your approach to work and the world around you?
I haven't really talked publicly about this, but I'll mention it. What does every leader in a business need? Like we need a board of advisors. We need mentors ourselves because not only do we want to be strong, we also want to think about be challenged in our thinking.
Right.
And um, and when I look across peers, I mean, I obviously have people that I'm close with and friends that I'm close with that I talk about things, whatever. But I wanted to challenge myself and see like, can I do that synthetically? Can I actually create for me a board of advisors
Mm-hmm.
that I can tap into for anything from like I talk to my kids going to school. I can ask them about careers and majors, all the way to like, should I post this thing on LinkedIn? And on my board of advisors, there's seven sort of virtual people that are modeled after real people because I
Uh-huh.
train them with their TED Talks, their speeches, their social media posts, their white papers, right? And it's just a constant learning thing. So they develop personas around who they are. And sort of like the Supreme Court, I don't ask it for an answer. I say, here's my problem, go debate. And then they debate, literally, I'll share it with you. They debate each other. And then while they're debating each other, they go through 3 rounds. And then it comes to a majority and a dissenting opinion. And for me, like, I guess, what I've learned in that is there's a lot that you can do because it's
Right.
really accelerated my ability to be more innovative and thinking and also gave me more confidence in sort of things that I do, wacky ideas. I think we all have wacky ideas every now and then that I have. So it's sort of my virtual board of advisors based upon like a real renowned economist, a real renowned marketer, a real renowned, hedge fund person, all the way down to a political pollster
I,
that I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool.
I'm smiling because, my friend, going back to where we started in DC, you just created Lincoln's virtual team of rivals.
So in some respects, I try to model it off of a more of a just what makes our democracy work, right? Sort of all that. So and I modeled it after that in some respects. I really look for like the contrarians in the mix.
This is awesome. So I'm gonna ask you this. I can't believe we're coming up on our time. So I've got 2 requests. One is personal, and one is for our listeners. So the
Okay.
first one is, since I've got you here, I'm going to
Okay.
ask you to be on my in-person team of advisors.
Okay. I would love to do that.
Because
I might add you. I'd love the same, but I also want to try you out on the virtual because you got a lot of podcasts I could use. So
hey, there we go. Let's train the model, right? So
okay.
that's number one. Number two is for all of us to say, when we think about the future, how should we think about human talent and AI talent coexisting as we move forward?
Yeah.
What's the benefit and beauty of that moment?
As humans, we are immutably resilient. We will always be resilient. There will not be a day. I debate with people about this, but there's not going to be a day where like all of us are going to be sitting on the beach and just enjoying our lives and letting the robots work. Because at the end of the day, we are still a society based on commerce, and we like to work. We like to feel productive at the end of the day. And so, I think you have to get over first the notion that like it's an either or because it's an and but the and is the roles will change. 1,000% the roles will change. So what's the specific role? But I still need people to man that, and I still need
Right.
people to own it and work with it. Using my board of advisors thing. It's like it's not telling me what to do. I specifically asked it for perspectives. I'm still making the decision around those perspectives, and I think as our roles will continue to evolve in that. So I think, number one, it's not a replacement of people. It's a refocusing of what work matters, this future of work, and what that future of work looks like, and what work really matters. Like so, what we're doing in our business is we've essentially created these hybrid talent models, right? Which is I still kind of have somewhat of a structure that looks familiar to a lot of people that are used to working with agencies, but I'm teaming them differently. Like, it's not just a pairing of our art director and a copywriter, for example. It's, bringing other people into the equation. We're allowing people to scale themselves and strategists be analytics folks at the same time. So we're really allowing people to expand into the middle of their jobs.
Right.
And I think that hybrid talent model allows our people to get into skills that they have, but their structure has never been in place for them to tap into. So that's where we are.
I love, when I think about your work and your story, this notion of unleashing potential and finding the moment and skills that go in from you recording the surgery, my friend, to designing and thinking of a new look agency. At the heart is all about the future. It's about adaptation, innovation, and human creativity. I can't believe our time is up, my friend. Thank you for this conversation, and thank you for pushing us and probing us to talk about this future in which marketing has to be different, because we're different and our opportunities are different.
I appreciate Benny. It was great meeting you, and thanks for the time. And I definitely look forward to having more conversations with you on this topic. So
This sounds great. We'll see each other soon, my friend.
awesome. All right.
And thank you all for joining us for this special episode of AMA's Marketing N. If you want to find out more about creativity and building dynamic teams and agencies that are more than partners, check out the work that's happening with Deloitte Digital. Check out the work that's happening with the AMA.org as we continue to work and build a more dynamic future of marketing. Thank you.